Happy, there we go. Maybe it's working. Happy Sunday, folks. Time for another weekly update. If I look shinier than usual, it's because my main monitor is going behind the phone. I've got a lot of notes from budget this cycle. So, this last week, we had our first round of budget discussions as the county commissioners. What we recommend is going to move forward. It'll go to the full budget committee, which includes some appointed citizens who had applied, and they're on that budget committee. And it went well. So, as it stands, it looks like the budget is going to balance. You might remember I said it looked like we had a 3.2 million deficit before. That was before some allocations were put in place, cost allocations across different departments within the county. That totaled about $2 million. And the next piece that came into play was the legislative change, or not, I don't know if I should say legislative changes, but federal changes around the O&C forest. It's federal forest that we receive a portion of the harvest off of, the money. Changes that happened, folks might remember last year, it looked like the federal government had taken away all of our revenue off of that. Now, as of a couple months ago, 2 months ago probably, we found out that it was being reinstated, and it was being reinstated at a higher rate. So I've misspoken before. He was saying it was 25% county and 75% federal. It had actually gone to 50% county, 50% federal, and now it is where it originally was in the agreements from almost a century ago, of 75% counties and 25% to the federal government. So what that did is it gave us a substantial jump, as well as increased harvest sale levels, to the point that it closed the remaining deficit. So we also have to bear in mind some of this is going to be from one-time monies, a lot of moving parts as far as the accounting goes. We'll just say one-time monies. Because it involves money moving from restricted funds into replace general funds, and then property sales and bits and pieces moving all over. The nutshell is next year we could have been looking at a $1 million deficit anyway, going about this the way we're going about. I don't think 2 mil was the cost allocation entirely, but it was 2 mil in total, plus the one-time money. Well, no, the one-time money was in there before the 2 and then the additional timber money. But what it would have meant is going into next year, we'd be looking at around a $1 million deficit again. So, from one school of thought, when we look at it right now, that's not balanced if we know we're going to have a substantial deficit again next year, because the funding we use this year is not recurrent funding. However, with the increased expectations in the sale levels by the federal government, it looks like that might also be solved next year, if things continue at the pace which the federal government has told us they will. Now, that in itself can be a concern, because last year they told us we're getting nothing. Now they're telling us we're getting a lot of money. Where is it actually going to fall? We're not sure yet, but counties have been told to write new forest management plans. So that does make it look like something is going to happen, probably fairly quickly. I know there's some concern from folks with the O&C timber harvests going up, if it's sustainable. So I can tell you, I had some notes. By 2035, the objective was to hit 410 million board feet harvested per year. So currently, during Biden's administration, it hit around 240 million board feet. During Trump's first term, it hit around 270 million board feet. The contract from the 30s was 500 million board feet minimum, or a sustainable harvest level. Sustainable harvest currently is more in the 1.2 billion board feet. So going to 410, the forest is going to be still growing faster than it's getting cut. So not as worried about that. We do always have to think of future planning. A lot of Oregon's land use laws from the 70s actually came from industry worried that too much development would happen and block out all the resources necessary. But yeah, it's a safe amount. It's not gonna wreck anything. I took notes throughout because there's stuff I see in these things in the conversations that I think would be interesting to people. So some of it in particular, I took a lot of notes around the South Coast Interagency Narcotics Team, so that is SINT. Um, so we have, I believe it's a sergeant and a half, deputy and a half, captain and a half, 1.5 FTE put into SINT. Might be 2. Somebody might correct me on that. But as far as agencies outside of ourselves, the only other contributions are a part-time from the Coquel, which is greatly appreciated, and it looks like North Bend is working on getting an in-kind officer through some grants so that they can participate as well, which is cool. Oregon State Police step in as needed. Obviously, our overlapping police departments step in where they can when something comes up. But as far as dedicated personnel, that's where those other things lie. And parole and probation contributes as well through some of their personnel. So that's pretty cool. Can tell you there's been work going on that involves ATF, the DEA, and Homeland Security Investigative Services. So there's some big stuff still going on. And one of the more sobering factors that came up was we were talking about SINT specifically on March 10th. On March 10th, we'd had 2 overdose deaths in Coos County within a week. One about a week prior to March 10th, and one the day of the budget meeting about the narcotics team. So this is, I sometimes wonder if folks go kind of numb to that aspect. I see a lot of folks that go out taking pictures of piles of garbage and these things and how horrible the world is, and that is a problem. It's important to remember that those things are not as substantial in the skein of that we have people dying in Coos County from the drug epidemic still. And I would think 2 in 1 week is substantial. There was some information around funding. So SINT runs on civil forfeitures and grants. When a civil forfeiture is done through the federal government, we receive 70%, or I should say SINT receives 70%. When that civil forfeiture is done through the state, it's 52%, and I don't know why that's lower. That's going to be something I have to look into. We talked about animal control. There's a concern that usually comes up when we talk about animal control's budget because we talk about euthanasia. And folks are under the impression, and accurately so, that we run a no-kill animal control department. The only context in which euthanasia is used is in 2 contexts. 1, if the animal is going to die anyway, it's used as a mercy. And 2, if the animal is too hostile, aggressive, unsafe to rehouse, then they are euthanized, unfortunately. And it's unfortunate people do things to the animals that cause them to be at that point. But it's one of those things, nobody needs animal control because things went right. Like a lot of functions of government, were usually not needed when something worked. So that's what those are. Something interesting being done in that department, or more broadly in the sheriff's office, is working on creating revenue generating solutions. So the only evidence incinerator, the nearest one, is in Tacoma, Washington. When we have stuff from Coos County that needs destroyed, it has to make it all the way to Tacoma, Washington to be destroyed. Sheriff's Department is working on getting their new furnace or incinerator. It's being used for animals, roadkill, that sort of thing, certified as a evidence destruction incinerator. So that would be a lot closer for nearby departments, obviously a lot closer for ourselves, and could generate revenue by providing that more easily available solution to other departments. So they're working anywhere they can to try and be a revenue generator, do things that are going to fund themselves so that the burden is lower on the citizen and we have a way to make things work. Some good news on the marine law enforcement front. Last year, the state had cut 30% from all programs around the state because they didn't want to sign an agreement with the Coast Guard, the federal government. A bunch of stuff was worked into an agreement around maritime security or marine law enforcement and security that was unrelated to that subject. I don't know if that changed or if the state just decided to sign it anyway, but that 30% is being reinstated this year, so that was good news as well. Let's see. Some of that's just my stuff, notes. Got that. Marijuana taxes. We noticed cigarettes, alcohol, and marijuana taxes are all going down, which means folks are starting to stop some of their habits, which, you know, not the worst thing in the world, kind of good. Let's see. ONC grant, we talked about that. Community service. There was some transient lodging tax reform this cycle at the legislative level. So the way that was, complicated stuff. Nutshell, some of the older hotels had a different setting, but default was starting a new transient lodging tax. 70% had to go to tourism promotion, 30% could go to the general fund of the county in which it was taking place, or the city, depending on who was levying the TLT. That was changed to 50-50. So that's something the commission can consider as well. One of the challenges with tourism, the business itself, where the tourists are going, generates revenue, obviously. In Oregon, for cities and counties, your only general fund revenue, primarily, is going to be property tax. So the income tax, we don't get any portion of. There is no sales tax in Oregon. Property tax is where it's at for our purposes. And tourism doesn't do as much of that, but lodging, if you've got a transient lodging tax, that is a way that funds are captured off of tourists to provide local essential services. So that'll be something we have to look at if we want to change how that goes. Now, that is pretty much I think it is only in Charleston that there's a transient lodging tax in Coos County. As far as county land goes, the cities have their own. Bandon Dunes, who we always appreciate, levies their own safety fee for us and then provides, it's well over $1 million this year. I can't remember the exact number, over $1.5 million. It was a big number. I feel like it was $1.9 million this budget cycle. So we appreciate that they do that. It is a huge contribution that they don't actually have to do. And because they chose to do it, it's done at a 70% to the county, which is a lot better of a formula for our purposes than it could otherwise be. Let's see. Boo-boo-boo. Oh, no, there's my number. From fiscal year 24 to 25, they generated 1.5 million. I think it is higher, though, this cycle we're anticipating. Bit of cool news. So the fairgrounds is building an amphitheater. That amphitheater is expected when it's completed, and it's not now. I don't actually remember when they said it's going to be completed. But when it's completed, they're hoping to be able to use it for folks to hold concerts, do theater, and it can hold, the number they would want to go to is up to 4,000 people. Technically, it can get quite a bit higher. That'll be its own mystery on how we manage 4,000 people in an amphitheater, but it's a cool thing that's coming, and it'll evolve over time, I'm sure. Also, the fair generated substantially more revenue this last cycle. There were some changes. The gate was made a little tighter to ensure folks actually stop by and get their ticket. You can buy tickets online, and it caused a substantial jump in the revenues. And there was a lot of free stuff for the kids there, so they figured that was part of the draw. It was good stuff all around. Veterans Services had another big success. So there are about 7,000 veterans in Coos County. 3,800 of them are about Vietnam era. So getting up there. Over this last year, so going into last year, I believe it was, we had about a third of the veterans in the county in the system. How was the amphitheater being funded? Could not tell you off the top of my head. Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head. Through their own revenues, I imagine. It's not general fund money, because that definitely wouldn't have made it through if it was general fund money. But yeah, we had about a third of the veterans in the county enrolled through our Veteran Service Officer, VSO, and 1,000 more were added last year. So they have been doing an incredible job at outreach. For parks, folks didn't know, we have a camera that points out towards Bassendorf now, so you can see the waves from the comfort of your own home. It's a little warmer at your house probably during the winter than it is out there. Sobering Center moving along. Let's see. There's some funding changes, Coos Health and Wellness. There's negotiations around contracts this year. There's a lot of programs that are funded by OHP or Medicaid, Medicare that are seeing some cuts. So had to cut around $1 million out of their budget. They don't take anything out of the general fund, which is cool. They're just shuffling around some programs, and even while that's happening, picking up some of the slack as programs have dissolved out of the community. And I should have said, too, the Veterans Service Office, I think it was SOVO, I was told, has closed. So they've been picking up that burden. Coos Health and Wellness has taken over programs as well. So I think Family Connects Oregon had been part of Bay Area Hospital. We're looking at how we can take that on. South Coast Together is a vehicle for trauma-informed care, training, that sort of thing. That was taken on from the ESD, or the Extended School District. I believe that's what ESD stands for. So that department is also still achieving its objectives, even with less funding, now doing more. Roads, we looked at some stuff and had a brief tangent about the gas costs, gas taxes, and I had asked if policies around electric vehicles have caught up as far as usage payments. I know electric vehicles have a higher registration cost, but that doesn't really capture usage of the road in the same way that gas taxes do. So outside of our hands, largely, just stuff we can provide input up to the state level about, but hoping to see some more effective reform at the state level around how they're calculating those fees and ensuring that people are paying in based on their usage, not just a guess on their registration fees. Solid waste in February saw a 30% increase in revenue over the prior year. So our dump, Beaver Hill disposal site, is doing quite well. We appreciate people are using it. If they're using the dump, it makes it less likely they're dumping it in the woods. We like that. Just a kind of observation there. Topic was brought up about wage increases for non-union employees. That includes the county commissioners. So at the point in time where we thought the deficit was over $3 million, I was opposed to taking any kind of increase for ourselves. One of the other commissioners agreed. One of the other commissioners had concerns that if wages don't increase for commissioners, then it'll be more difficult to get qualified folks to run for those positions. Obviously, I mentioned before, I have made more money than this before, but I like this. That's not always the case where folks have the luxury of making that decision. And I can tell you in other areas, there's a county more than 10,000 citizens smaller than ours where I believe their commissioners are making over 100,000. And I think they have a county manager as well. We don't need all that. But the 2%, given that the deficit has been resolved, I may go along with this time. That was definitely a battle in the last cycle of rejecting it. But if we've got the budget solid, I might go with that. We'll see what happens. And of course, it's not our say anyway. There's a budget committee with citizens on it. We can't raise our own pay. The public has, or representatives of the public have to agree and be in there. Assessor's office had some increases in revenues because they took some services over that were previously performed by the Department of Revenue. Thought that was interesting. And they've also been looking at, or some of the revenue has been up because they've done some work for other counties. So I like things like that. When I've run nonprofits in the past, I've got a bit of an expansionist mindset. If we can create bulk, it creates economy of scale. So I like this, where we're able to do some work outside of our own bounds and draw in money that didn't start here, but now it's going to be here. Surveyor's office, doing good. Probably one that a lot of folks don't think about, but checking lot lines, surveying the monuments, making sure everything is where it's supposed to be is pretty important, and they are doing well. It's not a very big department, but it is a necessary one. Very heavily involved whenever roads are being created or changed. Clerk's office, not any big changes. There was a tech plan that was in place that had come out of the prior Secretary of State that was going to cost quite a bit of money. The current Secretary of State has reversed that, so that was good news for them. The jail, we had to increase grocery allocations due to rising costs. So this last cycle it budgeted $110,000, and they're thinking that they may overrun that by the end of this fiscal year, just because of the surge in prices. So that was raised $20,000. It'll be $130,000 as we've proposed the budget at this time. There are infrastructure replacements that need to happen in the jail. We're proposing to do those at a phased approach to minimize the one-shot costs. And let's see. Got a interesting issue as far as funding and emergency management. They're stable, don't panic, but the state has been apparently a little evasive about one of the grants that pays for emergency management. We're just finding out about this year, just right about now, which is pretty late into the fiscal year. So some concerns around that, not necessarily concerns that it will be funded, but concerns about how the state is handling its cash flow, I guess would be the frank way I put that. No big updates for the medical examiner, but we like to remind everyone that we have one that's internationally recognized and one of the top ones in the world. Blanking on her name, but it made her, the DA liked to embarrass her with it, so I'm going to too. Child Support Division, mostly funded by the state and the feds. This was more of a trivia number, but last year our Child Support Division collected $2.85 million in child support. That is a lot of child support, but that's with a staff of a handful of people. I don't remember exactly how many, but they're not going to outnumber the fingers on one hand. And I do still have all my fingers. Let's see. Some of this other stuff. Somebody had made a comment through the process. They didn't think things were transparent about the funding around something to do with codes. It was a weird thing to bring up because somebody claiming something's not transparent when they're sitting on a public meeting where we've made the link publicly available and all the documents are available to the public was a little funny. I just bring it up because I found it interesting. Let's see. Yeah, some of these are just notes to myself, though. Like seeing where we can get some funding so that we can have the staff for better collaboration with programs like Barrier First Step, ADAPT, Coos Health and Wellness, Narcotics Anonymous. It's more of a note for my purposes, trying to figure out how we get more collaboration between them and folks exiting custody. Everybody would like to. It's just a matter of making it work, which usually comes down to money. That is my notes from the budget. Also was able to go up to the Elliott this last week. So they had meetings up there. I think it was Thursday that I was up there, where they talked about what the plan is for the property. So now it sounds like they're looking for more partners on it. They had a very nice map. It's got sections for lodging, some RV parking spaces, stuff for people on rotation, I believe is the intent there. Let's see, dedicated university space, I believe it was. There's definitely some space dedicated to tribal collaboration, handful of other bits and pieces. The issue that I keep pushing around that is a pretty simple one, basic one. So when Shutters Creek Prison was running, I say Shutters. Somebody pointed out to me this week, there's no S. It's Shutter. I'm still going to call it Shutters because the sign going up there says Shutter Landing. I saw an S somewhere. I don't think it was there, but it sounded good. Anyway, held 100 living wage jobs through the guards, and it was, I'm told, the most successful rehabilitative prison in Oregon. So it was a bit weird that that was the one that they decided to shut down, but it was. And now the Research Forest Project is going on up there. Elliott State Research Forest is the new name. What I've been pointing out is the need to see something equivalent. Not necessarily all of the same jobs. It would be nice to have 100 living wage jobs added back to the community. I don't think that's possible with this project. But they and I have talked, and the other people in the room have talked about how they contract with local businesses. How can we do as much as possible to ensure local logging companies are the ones that do the logging when they do a timber sale? Because they are doing those. They've got a bid out right now. Or what would they be doing? Probably RFPs for somebody to buy that up. Trying to make sure the logs go to local mills. They can't guarantee any of that, but we keep pushing, and they let me know they did as much outreach as they could, specifically to local businesses, timber businesses, to get that bought up and processed by local businesses so that we at least create some local jobs out of this. Let's see. Timber revenues, doesn't sound like they plan to split any with the county. I think that's all going back into the facility itself. I brought up carbon credit sales again while I was there. I've been provided a presentation that was given to the legislature about carbon credit sales. That's part of what their plan is with that property. I was getting the impression that there's not an intent to split any of that money locally either, which creates a problem for me. At least when it's timber, they can argue that they're going to create jobs. They can't guarantee there'll be jobs here, but they're creating jobs. Sale of carbon credits has no local benefit. There's no jobs created. Nobody's able to buy a house because the state sold a carbon credit to some company back east or wherever they are. So I've been pushing on him, and I'll keep pushing on him about that. The point I made there was that the design is very nice. All of us in that room were people that go to a lot of meetings. They're talking about making new meeting spaces. That's nice. But the average citizen in Coos County doesn't need a new meeting space. They need a good job and a house. So keeping their mind on that. That it's nice they want to make some new meeting spaces, but people need jobs and places to live. Um, let's see. That might have covered a lot of the big stuff from this week. Yeah, I think that covered all the big stuff from this week. Uh, Other little things, coordinating around people, connecting them. Some folks that want to develop housing. I think it's next week or the week after. I've got a meeting, joint meeting with the Oregon Military Department and the Coast Guard, talking about military housing and what they can do with the different properties they own in our area. Because let's see, there's a big chunk that the Coast Guard could buy and develop something on adjacent to what they already own, and the National Guard owns some properties out this way that not fully utilized. So I've been encouraging them to consider, hey, I hear you're working on moving people back out here to be based out of our armory again. Do you want to make some housing for the folks that are coming back here? Some military housing on the National Guard side, if possible. So keeping those conversations going as well. We all come at it from different spots. Obviously, the military isn't what you would normally think of maybe when you think about housing development in Coos County, but we've all got a role to play, and we can all find a way to do it, I think. So I suppose I'll end it there, and everybody have a good week, and we will talk to you later. Oh no, my slow connection button popped up. Fun fact, I can't hit the close button if that's there.